Hello, and welcome to the session on migrating from HP or Micro Focus ALM and other legacy tools to Spira. My name's Adam Sandman, and I'll be the presenter today. And in this talk, we're going to be looking at some of the challenges you will face in migrating from other tools to Spira Test, Spira Team, or Spira Plan. And we're going to focus on migrating both from other tools like Micro Focus ALM and also some other tools as well, and also from documents and other manual methods like Excel or Word. And there's different challenges with each. So we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of migrating from these two different types of environment and some of the things that we recommend you should do to minimize the change management issues and increase user adoption. So first of all, let's have a bit of an overview of how you can migrate data into Spira. Well, there's really two ways you can be starting. You might have an existing tool that's like Spira. So you might have Micro Focus or HP ALM, also known as Quality Center, or if you're older like me, Test Director from Mercury Interactive. And we have migration tools from all those different versions. You could also be using another tool that's maybe a little bit simpler, like TestRail or PractiTest or TestLink or TestStuff or some of the other tools out there, or QTest. That are test management tools, and you want to migrate to Spira Test or Spira Team or Spira Plan to get some of the advantages of improved usability and better performance and additional features that we have that they may not have in those other tools. Also, you may be migrating from other requirements management tools like DAWs or other tools like agile planning tools like version 1. So whatever tool you're coming from, you're going to be migrating from an application with structured data. The second possibility is you could be coming from an environment where there's not really a lot of tooling. You're using Excel sheets, Word documents, Google Sheets, or other basically paper-based methods. And I think they say that the #1 test management tool in the world is still Excel. Well, hopefully that's changing, but unfortunately there's still some truth to that. So you might be coming from that instead. Or it may be a combination. You may have some teams that were using ALM but then decided not to because of the cost or because of the complexity and started reverting back to Google Sheets or Excel. And so you may have some teams using one tool, other teams using another. And so migration is always a key part of implementing any tool, and Spira is no exception. So what are the challenges? So if you're coming from an existing tool, so let's say you're using ALM or maybe TestRail, just to pick on those two, the advantage will be you have a tool, and we have migration tools that we'll show you that can automatically move the data from those tools to Spira. So the great thing is you literally push a button and over comes the data. It maintains many, if not all, of the relationships between the requirements and the test cases and the runs. It migrates over the attachments. I mean, really, from a pure migration standpoint, it's really easy. You push a button, you wait for it to finish, it's done. You do some auditing, some checking, and you're good to go. However, the change management aspects shouldn't be misestimated or misunderstood. There's actually a lot of change management that will go in, because people will have used the old tool and will be used to the way the things are called in the old tool. For example, in Test Director, you have things called a test lab and test plan. And you have defects. Spira has incidents, test sets and test cases. The requirements works a little bit differently. You may also have, in other tools like TestRail, you have test suites and test plans, and the layout is different. Even if the names are the same, the way that things work in the tool may be subtly different. And people will often get fixated in your team about how they used to do things in the old tool. Even if they didn't necessarily like the old tool, even if it wasn't a particularly efficient way of working, they will have built up habits and built out ways of working that will have to be unlearned. And so if you're going to adapt to Spira, just because ALM, for example, looks quite similar to Spira in terms of the naming and the structure and the relationships, and same thing with TestRail, don't underestimate the work that you have to do to try and help people smooth their path to the new system. And to be successful, we would recommend over explaining, going through sessions with them, and you can bring in Inflectra consultants to help you with that process. But a lot of it is also just having patience and tolerance, trying to figure out what are the roadblocks. And I think distinguishing between what is actually a real difference and a roadblock, such as I used to get this report from this tool, how do I get that report today? Or I used to go to this screen to get this data that I need for my job, where do I get that from? That's legitimate, impasse that someone's reached, versus I don't like this tool because it doesn't work the exact same way the old tool did. Well, that may be just something they have to deal with, but you can still help them. You can create custom reports in Spira. You can show and hide columns. You can simplify the tool, add custom fields, change workflows. Once the migration is done, just because we migrated all the data over for you automatically, the job isn't done. Think about how you can make the migration logically easier. Things that they are used to in the old tool, maybe you could change the workflows in Spira, just make it easier from a change management standpoint for them to work the way they used to do. Even if that's not the way you want Spira to work long term, it still can be a useful interim step to ease the path of adoption. Now, if you're coming from manual methods, it's a whole different story. Usually if you're coming from spreadsheets, Excel sheets, and Word documents, or other types of manual work, there's a lot of data migration that will have to be done because you don't just want to pull this data in. Now, we do have migration tools that I'll be showing you in the live part of this session where you can move data from a spreadsheet or a Word document into Spira. And it's really good. It's a great time saver. It will migrate in your tests and your requirements, your tasks, your defects. And it's a great way of doing that. It is obviously not as streamlined as using a tool, like a migration tool from, say, ALM, because spreadsheets have to be pasted in and there's different formats. So we would say you should recommend, before you do the actual migration, the physical migration through Excel, for example, look at your test case, look at your data. You don't want to migrate junk into Spira to pollute the system. And when you come from the spreadsheets and Word docs, you typically will find that a lot of the teams have been working in different ways. There's probably not one spreadsheet. There's probably 20 different types of spreadsheet, all different. So use this as an opportunity to standardize your test process, standardize your agile methodology, your software development lifecycle, all the different things that you're bringing into Spira. Don't just migrate them straight in. First, do an assessment of the data, clean it up. Also understand that you're going to have a different way of working in Spira. So before you migrate, make sure that the data you migrate in is going to support that way of working. And secondly, once you do the migration and the data is actually into the tool, there's going to be work you're going to have to do to actually help the users adapt to being in a tool. Especially if they're used to, say, Word documents, they're going to perhaps be used to be able to write anything they want, or a spreadsheet. With a spreadsheet, you can organize data in any ways you want, any columns, any layouts. Every team can work exactly the way they want to do, and they've done this for many years. So like we saw with the legacy tools, the same thing is true. People are going to have to find out how to adapt to the tool, and teams that may work very differently, you may want to start working together. That may be the benefit of a tool. It helps to standardize the way the company operates. But people will have to get used to that. And again, you might want to do things like create custom reports, create custom workflows, change the workflows, add fields, do things to make the Spira feel more like their old way of doing things. Maybe every single team migrates their spreadsheets in and they have their own product template. And then over time, you rationalize the templates to you have standardized templates. Don't try and standardize everything day one. Otherwise, users will rebel. And the biggest danger with things like Excel and Word is everyone's got them. And if people don't like the tool or feel like they weren't consulted on how the tool is implemented, they'll start reverting back to the spreadsheets and the Word documents. And you want Spira to be the source of truth. You don't want people exporting data out of Spira, then changing it in Word and Excel, and Excel and Word become the latest test case. And what's in Spira is old. Once you do that, then users are not going to trust the tool, and from there it's a downhill slope. So it's really important with both the manual methods and coming from a legacy system to make sure that you get buy-in and do as much as you can to smooth the buy-in. When you're coming from people using spreadsheets and Word documents, though, the biggest danger there is that everyone's had their own way of working, and they probably like that. So you will have to do some proactive corralling of the people, and I think showing the value. If you can show people the reports they're going to get out, the data they're going to have, the real-time visibility, and all the work that they're currently doing in Excel that they won't have to do, that's actually going to be the biggest selling point for them. If you can do that, you're going to win a lot more. Okay, so that's sort of the high-level change management and I think considerations. In terms of how you do the actual migration, that comes in two phases depending on the tool. So first of all, let's look at coming from a legacy tool. If you've got a tool like HPALM or TestRail or Doors or any of the tools that we integrate with, you're going to basically have a importing tool from us that you run, and you point it at your existing tool. This is the ALM example. There's it on top right is the ALM screens, and the import tool will suck in all your data from ALM and turn it into Spira team data. And you push the button, you choose what data you want to import, the destination project, the source project, push the button, wait for it to finish, and then do a data audit, look at the tool, change permissions, change workflows, do some post-import cleanup, but it's basically point and click. Same thing with TestRail, the MTM. or test link. So TestRail, Microsoft Test Manager, test link, Practitest, Qtest, all of the importers for those tools all look the same. You choose the URL, the login, the password, the project you're going to import. You pick what data you're going to pull in. Depending on the tool you're using, it might be milestones versus releases, test cases versus test suites. Each of the tools we have for importing, we use the terminology in the tool you're migrating from, and then it's going to come into Spira into the new UI. And once it's finished, again, do the same thing, do an audit of the data, check the log file, make sure everything's in as you expected. Then you're going to go in and customize workflows, permissions, add custom fields, and do the post-migration steps to make your users feel comfortable in the new tool, run reports and things. But for the most part, it's a point-and-click activity. The data migration part is very straightforward. We also integrate with requirements management tools, not just testing tools. So we do import from things like Microsoft, IBM Doors, Rational Doors, Tellogic Doors, depending on the era you used it. Either way, you connect to the Doors user interface using the Doors import tool, and it will bring the data into Spira as a requirements document in a requirements section. We also do have import tools for other tools like Requisite Pro. We've also got a relatively new import tool for the REQIF, requirements interchange format file. That's a standardized requirements format that a lot of tools can export in. So if your tool isn't listed, look at using the REQIF importer instead. It can bring requirements in from any tool that can export into that standard format. Then migrating from manual methods, how does that work? Well, we have different plugins. So depending on which tool your data is stored in, if it's an Excel sheet, a Google sheet, or a Word document, depending on the version of Excel, for example, or if it's a Excel on Windows versus Excel on the Mac, we have some different versions of these tools. This is our Excel 365 tool. This is the one we will recommend for anyone using Excel today. If you've got Excel 365, which is basically Excel 2013, I think, and later, Mac or PC, this is the one to use. It's very straightforward. It's cross-platform, and the installation is much easier. The template's built in for putting the data in. There's also the Excel Classic import tool. If you're using Excel 2010, 2007, 2003, some versions of 2013 as well, we do have this version maintained. It's good. It only works on Windows. It's a little bit trickier to use. But again, some people are used to that version. And if you've got an older version of Excel, it is the one to use. I'll show you both in the live portion. MS Word, that's available as well. And that will bring over your requirements and test cases. And it will bring over the styles, the headings, and the indentation. If the test cases are in a table, it will bring over the test steps as well. It's also pretty good because it will bring over any embedded images. So it's a nice feature if your requirements are in Word documents or your test cases. It's a good tool to use, especially if you've got lots of embedded images that you want to maintain. And then lastly, if you're using Google G Suites, we have an equivalent to the Excel 365 migration tool. It's the Google Sheets import tool. Very similar. All the columns are laid out. The data gets pasted in. It brings the template up when you load it up, and it brings in the data from G Suites. So that's pretty much the migration options you have from a legacy tool, from a Word document, an Excel sheet, a Google Sheets doc. We also do actually have some other things like MS Project import as well. We're not going to be covering that today, but there's lots of different migration tools. So we'll be getting into live application in a second. Okay, and now we're going to move on to the live application portion of this session. So what we'll do is we're going to be migrating some data in from a legacy system. In this case, it's going to be HP ALM into SpiraPlan. And we're also going to migrate some data from spreadsheets and Word documents into SpiraPlan as well to show you the manual methods aspect. Now, all of the migration tools that we're going to use and other ones as well are all available on the menu. You go to support from our company website. You choose if it's Spira Test, Team, or Plan. And then in the navigation, you'll see all of the available downloads, and they're categorized by import tools, automated testing tools, source code, and so on and so forth. The ones for migration are going to be in the importer section and also in the other section. So the first section contains all the migration tools for documents. So Excel 365, Google Sheets, the classic Microsoft Office importers for Word and Excel and Project, the sample templates that you need to use for Word and Excel and Project, and also then under that will be the test management tool migration tools. This is the legacy tools portion. So this first portion is your documents for your manual method import, and then the second part will be your test management software. HP ALM, any version of 11.5 or later should use this one. If you're using an older version of ALM, like version 10 or 9, there are also older versions at the bottom here. If you're coming from Microsoft Test Manager, anything later than 2013, use this one. There are older ones down the bottom. Then you've got TestRail, PractiTest, and TestLink. In addition, depending on when you view this video, we may have some additional migration tools for things like Tricentis Q-Test as well that are being under development as we speak. For the migration from requirements management tools, they're listed under the bottom under requirements management. We have import tools for Enterprise Architect, Rational Doors, Yama, Requisite Pro, and version 1. We also have an importer for the RecIF or Requirements Interchange format as well. We can show you that too. So that's used to import requirements files from a variety of different tools. Okay, so that's the where you get everything from. Let's look at the application. So this is a Spira plan demo instance I signed up for about 5 minutes ago. So you can sign up for a trial online yourself and play with this. You get a unique URL that you're going to be using. And inside of this system, we have some sample projects, which you can see right here. So first of all, let's go and migrate from HP ALM. ALM is running over here. This is ALM, if you remember it. It's an older looking application. As you know, ALM has to run in IE. It only runs in that browser. And I've downloaded and already installed our migration tool onto this computer here, the HP ALM importer. So double click on it. And that's the URL, login and password for ALM. Logged in successfully. The first warning was that I couldn't access the site admin. I don't need the site admin. That's optional. And then I'm going to choose the domain and the project. I'm going to migrate over the demo project, which is the tours application. And I'm going to bring over all the information. Just to save time for today's demo, I'm not going to bring over the attachments because that does take longer, but it can do that as well. Hit next. That's our login for Spira test. Sorry, in this case, Spira plan as well. And it works with Spira test or team or plan. Okay. And start import. As it does the import, it actually writes everything to a log file as well. And that log file can be found on the desktop, QC import right here. So while that's running in the background, we're going to look at the other import tools as well. So let's go ahead and look at, first of all, Excel 365. So if I've already installed it, you install it through the marketplace. It goes right here, App Source. Get it now. I already have it installed. So if I go to Excel, I show task pane, and it's going to connect. And I need to use my URL and my username and password. Now, this is also really important. It's the API key. Sorry, it's not password, it's RSS token. So unlike with ALM, when I'm using the password, it is the RSS token. So you need to make sure that your user does actually have an RSS token. Mine does not. So enable RSS or API token. And that, please hit save. So I'll do what it says. And then I'm going to click on it and that copies it to my clipboard. That's my API token. Go over here to Excel, logging in with administrator, API token, log in. Okay, great. Now I want to migrate data to Spira, so send data to Spira. So let's do that. And I'm going to migrate into an existing product. I'll do it into the empty product one. And I'm going to bring in, we'll just do requirements for right now. Prepare sheet. Okay, and there it is. There's my sheet. The fields in black are required. The fields in white are optional and include custom fields. So we notice there are both standard fields and custom fields here. We're going to come back to that in just a second. Let's see how ALM is getting on. It's importing. It takes a little bit of time to import over the network. So we're going to leave that be, but it is importing. And now we're going to import, first of all, some requirements. So let's just create requirement 1. Or requirement, or actually I'm going to create, let's just make it a bit more realistic, functional requirements. And the functional requirement might be system needs to let you log in. System needs to let you log out. Need to have error handling. Need to have email notifications. So these are some requirements of a system. And I'm going to indent those. And the type, feature, maybe this is a need. This is a user story, for example. Okay. Priority, high, medium, low, and we won't bother with the other ones. Well, these will all be draft, so they're all requested. You can leave it blank. These are all, and again, these are all optional if they're in white, so we don't actually need to do those. There are custom fields, so let's fill a couple of custom fields and show you that. Difficulty, that's a custom field. Difficult, easy, moderate, URL, www.xyz.com. And notes would be some notes. So I've just filled in some red fields. So there we go, that's some data. Let's go add to Spira. There you go, all done. Nice. Let's go over here to Spira. And let's go to sample product, empty product 1. And hopefully we have our requirements. Here we go. The type is displayed, the name is here. And if you go to any filter by that, if you show that the priority is here too, if we show the custom fields, we will show the, where is it gone? Difficulty. There we go, difficult, easy, moderate. And if I show notes. So the data comes across nicely. So that's good. So that's my requirements. We'll go to test cases. We'll do test cases next. We've got no test cases. Let's create a folder. So we'll create a new folder called functional tests. There's my functional tests. Nothing in there right now. Go back to here. There's you've got the sheet's got the name and the ID of the project. So let's choose a new one. Let's do test cases. Update template. Okay. Oh, it's all gone. Great. We now got the test case sheet. Again, bold is required. Black bold is required and white is optional. And we have test case and test steps. So test case would be, test that we can log into the application. And if it's hard to read these, just go in here and go like that. We can make them full width. So test that we can log into the application. Description, I don't need a description. And the test step would be, step 1 might be click on login button. Expected result would be the login page appears. Enter username and password. The result would be data is accepted. And click submit. The user is logged in. This is the test case row, so we go here, and that would need to be a functional test case. Priority would be priority high. That's optional. Status would be draft. And there you go. Our test case folder, functional. See, the dropdown has my folder in it too. Custom fields, so www.xyz.com. So custom fields are there. So that's an example test case. Let's go add that to Spira. Done. Wow, that's fast. Go in here, refresh. There it is. There it is. And there's the author, priority, URL, name. I didn't put a description in. There are my steps. all done. So that's how you'd migrate from a spreadsheet using the Excel 365 importer. Very easy to do. All right, let's look at the HPLM. Still going, it's done everything but defects, so we'll leave it be. And you can import different things at the same time. Just don't import them into the same product at the same time. That might cause the requirements to get interwoven with each other. So we're importing from ALM into one project. In fact, it creates a project automatically, which we'll see. Whereas here we're doing the test cases, the Excel and the Word into separate, already empty products. So I'm going to go to my next product, which is sample empty product 2. And that's empty. And now we're going to use the old Excel sheet. So I'll close this. This is the Excel 365. I'm going to close the sheet. And in fact, with the old Excel 365, it's a little bit, so old Excel rather, you have to use the template and then install the add-ons separately. So whereas Excel 365, it's a single add-on that has in the task pane, it has the application logic for connecting and it has the template. With the old one, you have to download the template separately. There it is. And it's got separate, this one has different, there's separate tabs for each artifact that doesn't automatically load them for you. I'm going to close the Excel 365 one to avoid getting myself confused and hopefully not you confused. So with the old version, you go to the add-in section. It's here, not under team, not under the home like the other one is. It's actually in the add-in section. You connect up here and it assumes that you do have the right sheet open. So it's not as intelligent. We put the login in here. This time it is the password you use, not the API key. Unless you have single sign-on with it as your AD or ADFS or one of our OAuth providers. But so you, depending on your admin, you may have to use a password or an API key, but usually it's the password for this one. We'll choose sample empty product 2. And we did releases and requirements. Yeah, we can do requirements again. Actually, these are requirements. We can do requirements and we can do test cases. So with this one, I've got some sample data already here, so I'm not going to type it all in. Requirement name, description, and so on is needed. With this one, most of the fields are required. Also, the custom fields, you have to enter the ID values in for list fields and the text values for text fields. So it's not quite as intelligent as the new one. So for the requirement, you put in the name field. Description is optional. This at the top will tell you what format's expected. So if you want to put releases in, they've got to be the version number. The types come from the drop-down, so do the priorities, so do the statuses. But things like the author, the person who wrote it, it's the ID of the author. Owner is the ID, and then component would be also actually the name of the component. So some things are names, some things are IDs. Really be careful, look at the top. That's important. So that's what we'll do. We'll import that in, export to Spira. The IDs get populated in here. That's how you know it's done. And if you want to do test cases are over here. Test cases have a similar structure to the new tool, except that the test cases are on the left-hand side. The test steps are on the right. This row type column is really important. That tells the old import tool, is it a folder? Is it a test case? Is it a step? Now, the one nice thing with this older one is it does let you import folders at the same time. The disadvantage is you've got to use this nesting very carefully so that the test case appears in the right folder. It's a little bit more fiddly. We've already filled this out. The test case name is here. The description is here. Priority and type were drop-downs. So with status, they're drop-downs. I didn't bother with the other fields. And the test steps are over here. Every test step's got a description, expected result, and sample data for a couple of them. Custom fields, I filled a few of them in as well. So that is our test cases. So the important thing here is to change your drop-down to test cases and hit export. And that's going to appear in the system as well. And again, the IDs will appear just like the new one does in some ways. If we go over to here to Spira, we'll see, hit refresh. We've now got the test folders. Click on them. In there is a test case. In that test case, we have steps. If we go to requirements, we'll see the requirements are also in here too, just like I created. And it follows the tree structure using the indentation for the requirements, using the Excel standard indent and outdent right here. So that's how you would migrate from both new and old flavors of Excel. Let's see how HPLM, oh great, that's finished. With that, it's done, hit done. You can look in the log file. The log file is really important, and all the migration tools have a log file. look in the log file. It goes through exactly what was migrated. If it couldn't access certain fields or anything like that, whatever the issue is, it will warn you. So it's really useful to have that reference. It's also a good audit trail to know exactly what links were created. If it couldn't access the data because the ALM API wouldn't let you in, which unfortunately does happen, then you'll know. And so it gets you an idea of why something didn't happen. So do review the log, but obviously the first thing you do is check what imported. Let's have a look. So with the ALM importer and many of the other importers that we have for legacy tools, we do create the product automatically and we customize it with the appropriate fields. So that's one good thing. So let's go ahead and have a look. Oh, I lost my import file. Hold on. Desktop, here we go. Adding project list, a demo project is called. Okay, so that's good to know. What is it actually called? Oh, there it is. I couldn't see it. Demo project. So let's select that. Let's go to first of all, let's go to custom fields, because actually we do import the custom properties. So if we go to custom properties for this project, we'll notice, and it does create a new template, and the logins and the emails, the logins get imported as well. So we've imported from ALM the various custom fields. The ALM ID is also added as a field. Test case ID. So that way there's traceability when you migrate in to the different artifacts that came in from ALM. So let's look at requirements. So the requirements come in. There's our requirements tree. And it mirrors pretty much what's in ALM. There's ALM. It's uglier, but it's all there. There's our requirements tree. You can see, at least this is, these are test sets. Sorry, I need to go to requirements. Oh. Test resources, there's tests, there's defects, it's all here. So these are your requirements and your test cases. If you go here, it's all the requirements coming in from ALM. And the test coverage is all here. If you go to a test case, requirements, first of all, the tree structure is maintained, it's a feature, the priorities, any values that we had in ALM will be here, the reviewer field is populated, the existing ID in ALM is here too, the release is brought across. So we bring over as many of the relations as we can. We also bring in a description. We also bring over the test coverage. So these are the tests that are linked in ALM to this. We can then drill down, go to a particular test case. In ALM, this one failed. Again, custom fields here are all filled out. The level, the priority, the reviewer, is it reviewed? The ALM test case ID is right here. There's the description. We actually maintain the formatting from ALM, which is nice. And we bring over all the test steps with the formatting and the parameters. And if we link to test cases, like child test cases, all of that stuff gets brought over. So it's really, really good. It brings over the entire system and all the relationships. There's the defects that were logged. And if we go into test sets, so we're actually going to test cases. Here's all the test cases. The subject hierarchy is here. All the tests are here. I mean, it is a full import load, which is nice. Going to the test sets. Your test sets are all here. Here's a test set, the data, the formatting, there's your test cases, there's your test runs. If you want to see an execution, you go into test runs. There's a failed run. Let's have a look at that one. There's your failed run, and there's your step-by-step what happened. So it's pretty neat. You have everything here. And lastly, let's go to defects. And all the defects loaded into, with all the priorities and severities and everything loaded in. So it's a pretty good import with all the data. And the last thing is, let's go to dashboard. Let's use some of the new reporting in Spira. And we get dashboards. So let's look at testing. Requirements test coverage, test progress. Because we use the dates that ALM had, we're bringing in all the history from ALM. So it's really nice. You get a full project load with all the defect information, the requirements information, the coverage. And that took a few more minutes and everything's migrated across. So it's a lot easier if you can use a tool migration like ALM rather than Excel. But obviously if your data is not in a tool or it's a tool that doesn't have a plugin for yet, then obviously you have to use Excel. So that's an example of a tool-based migration. So we've done Excel, we've done ALM, we've done the new form of Excel as well. Let's close this down. Let's do Microsoft Word next. So go to Microsoft Word. We're going to import into one of our sample projects. So let's go back to sample MP product 1. This is the one we did from the new Excel importer. So we have got a couple of requirements we brought in. I'm just going to delete those for right now. And now we're going to do a Microsoft Word import. To test this out, we actually have a sample template. You don't need this. It's not like the Excel sheet where you have to have a sample document, a sample template. It's just we provide the sample that we know works cleanly to show you how it works for demo purposes. So definitely, I would use this one first, understand how the import works, and then try a real document. Now with Microsoft Word, it's a little bit different. With Word, there's no tables in here. So what we do is we do what's called style mappings. So if you go to the add-in, it's right here. You connect like we just did. I'll use the same URL, administrator, and then the password. And there's two different things. So first of all, for requirements, we use the style mappings and we map the heading level to the level in the requirements tree. So if you look at the outline in Word, you can see there's an outline. Functional requirements contain business features, contain use cases, and so on. There's an outline in the document. We're going to use that exact outline to determine what level of requirements we have. So if I was to select it, you do have to select the text as well. So we select the text, and we're going to do the requirements first. We'll do those. All the requirements, we select down, all the way to the end of requirements before we get to test cases. So select all the text. And then go to style mappings and make sure that your documents, these are the styles in this actual live document. Make sure they match the levels you want them in Spira. Now, I know these are correct because this is the way it's set up for default, but in a document of your own, these styles might be different. So make sure that the levels of Spira that you expect do match the headings and the outline styles that you have. Any text that's not one of these styles is considered body text and will be imported in as the raw description of the requirement. So, okay, let's bring that in. So export to Spira. And while it's running, we can go over here into Spira and do refresh. We'll see the data coming in like that. And wait for it to finish. And this tool does put an error message, if there are any, on the desktop of the machine. So there'll be a Spira Word import log. So it's empty right now, but that's where it will log anything if there's any issues. It's still loading them in. Well, we can look at them while they're loading. We don't need to worry. The executive summary came in. That was the top level. There was also some table of contents stuff. That's what these nones are. So sometimes you might have to, with a document, clean up things that you don't need. We'll do that afterwards. But the important thing is if we look at the function requirement, let's look, and then the context, we'll see what's come in. So that's the function requirement. There's the name. There was no description. The context is the next part of the document that has the text. We do bring over all the images that are embedded and attach them as attachments like that. That's okay, we're done. And then we also embed the image directly inside here, which is nice. So we finished. All of our requirements are in. I'm just going to delete these ones that were the table, basically because we had some rogue spaces in the document. Perfect. Yep. We've now got our document that we brought in. And if you use the Spira outline view, you're going to see all the requirements in this tree structure. If you want to see it as a document, this is our document, like this. Another way you can see it is to go into the document view in Spira, and you'll see it as a document like this. And now it literally mirrors the document. So that's an example of a requirements document that we've imported. It's broken down all the requirements into discrete items. It's brought in the description field. It's brought in the embedded images. There's not a lot you have to do. It's done it all for you. It's embedded all the content. So the word importer is really good when you've got lots of rich content, but it doesn't let you pick specific fields. So if you've got lots of attributes of a requirement and there's not a lot of text, you might want to paste from Word into Excel and do that. If it's primarily the content, the words, the pictures, the headings that are important, and there aren't many attributes, then you're probably better off using the word importer instead. So just decide which is going to fit your needs best. For test cases, it's very similar. The test cases are over here. We're going to import some test cases from Word. So let's go over to test cases. I have some from before, from the Excel importer. We'll leave those in the system. We'll just add some test cases now. So with this one, you also select the test cases and the text. So you do have to select the text just like you would do for the requirements section. And the style mappings is a little bit different for test cases. If you go over to style mappings, choose the test case section. The folder name and the heading name are heading 1 and 2. So this is going to create a folder called functional tests. And then test case 1, test case 2 is heading 2 in the document. That's the test case name. For the actual steps, we use the table. So it relies on us having a table here, column 1, column 2, column 3, and that maps to the test step description, expected result, and sample data. Now, this document was designed to automatically be right from the beginning, so the right columns are listed. If you've got different columns, you might need to change the mapping. If your order is different or you've got extra columns in between that you want to skip, you may have to change a different column. So this is really important to get that set up. Once that's done, change the drop down to test cases. Don't forget to do that. All these will come in as requirements. And hit export again. And it's now going to bring them in. Oops, I shouldn't have opened that file. That log file. Hold on. I shouldn't have opened that while I was doing the last import. Hopefully this will work. If not, I have to open and close Word. Let's try again. No, all right. I inadvertently locked the file. That was my mistake. So I'm going to close Word and reopen Word again. Let's go up here, grab my document again. So don't do what I did. Don't lock the Word. Don't lock that text file. And all we need to do here is go to the test case section. And we'll just select those like that. Connect. The good thing is we do remember the logins and passwords and the URLs, so you don't have to worry about that. Choose test cases, choose the right product, export. Yeah. Okay, it's importing now, exporting now. Again, we go over to Spira, we can see it live, hopefully. Yeah, there it is. Functional, it's created the folder already. Test cases are now appearing. I think we have 2 or 3 tests. We'll look at the first one. There's the test case. There's the description that came over from the document. There is the steps. There we go. And there we have it. Our 2 test cases brought over with all the steps and description, all the formatting and the folder. So that's how you would import from a Word document. So just to recap, we have imported into our brand new demo instance of Spira a HP ALM project, which we did that using the ALM importer. And that brought it in as a whole new product or project right here. It automatically brought over the custom fields. It brought over the requirements, the test cases, the test sets, the test runs, and the defects, and the releases, and all of the history that goes with it, and traceability. And I didn't do attachments just for today's for speed, but it would bring over all the attachments as well. So it's a full project level migration. It's really sophisticated and it's really powerful. And we've tested with a lot of different clients, and it's really robust. And we have the same functionality for TestRail, for Practice Test, for Test Link, and also for Microsoft Test Manager. And again, by the time you watch this video, we'll soon have one out for Q-Test as well. We can also import requirements in the same way from DAWs, Rec Pro, Rec IF files, version 1, and also from Enterprise Architect. We will be also adding support for things like Rally as well, Broadcom Rally, CA Rally. So that's some of the migration in action. In addition, we also imported into an existing project from Excel 365, from Excel, older versions, and from Microsoft Word. We also do have options for Google Sheets as well if you're a G Suite customer. And it works very much the same way as the Excel 365 one. If you have any questions about data migration, both the running of these tools, but also the questions and ideas about the change management aspects that I mentioned at the beginning of the session, please feel free to ask them now in the chat window.